Hello, it's February 10th, 2022, and this is the Backdrop Weekly developer call. We get together every week to discuss the latest priorities and planning for Backdrop CMS, core and beyond. We'll get started with some introductions. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet from Oakland, California. Let's go to Tim and then Joseph.
Hi, I am Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim, and I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And I'll just mention that I'm working on Backdrop Live right now. I'm excited about that. That's all.
Fantastic. Joseph, could you give us an introduction? And then Greg?
Sure. Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a backend developer from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Thanks, Joseph. Greg, and then Robert.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece. Interested in to help with anything related to Backdrop as I can. Thanks.
Great. And Robert?
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet from Altadena, California, and I work on various odds and ends.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Got a little bit of a small crew today. Our overall topic for today, we're still working on getting 122 like major release planning put together, deciding how we're going to prioritize certain things, what we're going to prioritize. So today's meeting will be kind of a pretty typical run through of like a weekly status update of things that we've covered, and some kind of loose planning for 122, but we're not going to really deep dive into that as our primary plan. But we'll get into that a little bit as well. Let's see. Before we go into core, let's do the quick contrib update or community update. We didn't have new contrib modules released this week, but we did have a new contrib member join this week, R. Bargerhuff, Rick Bargerhuff. Thank you. Welcome to the Backdrop contrib community and contrib maintainers. And thank you for porting the CAS module, CAS module, Central Authentication Server, something that we could use on Backdrop properties, quite honestly, as some way to centrally log in. I'm not actually sure if that's going to be a good solution for us, but that is a very helpful and useful module to have in the community, and I'm really happy to see it in the Backdrop contrib space, as well as your joining of the group. So thank you and welcome, Rick. Okay, let's see. We've got a forum post every week where people can post things that are priorities for them or just things they're struggling with that they would like discussed during these meetings. And we'll go ahead and bring that up. There's only one post this week. Olaf Zerbinski asked some questions about the translation server, and I'll just read this entire post. In the German Zulip channel, we chatted recently about localized.backdropcms.org. The site provides translations of Backdrop core, but so far not for contributed projects. While it is possible to add contrib projects to the site, we don't have a good way to add English language source files to their releases. I do that manually for Backdrop core releases, but I won't be able to do that for more projects and releases. So the questions he has: how can we make progress recording automatic generation and distribution of language files, ideally not only for core but also for contrib projects? What's a good approach? Who wants to and is able to help? And should we spend money on this infrastructure task? This links over to localized.backdropcms.org issue number 6, where we've had this issue open the last several years. So yeah, a little bit of background. Localized.backdropcms.org does exist. It's a Drupal 7 website because that's where all the localization modules that they were ready to go, and we just spun up the Drupal 7 site. It's worth noting actually that some of our other properties, like backdropcms.org itself, were Drupal 7 sites before Backdrop was released, or I think up until like Backdrop 1.2 or something like that. So this isn't really uncommon for us. And some of the ideas that we've had in the past include building something into the packager. So when a GitHub release is created, it goes off and pings backdropcms.org, and backdropcms.org then creates a node and creates the release archive and then uploads it back to GitHub and does those sorts of things. And we could add localization extraction in there as well. We have the POTX module has been ported to Backdrop, so that portion of it, like we have the ability to extract strings from modules and generate those POTX. Those are the template files for translations. We can do that within Backdrop, or we can use 777 still as well. But the automation piece of things is where we've kind of gotten stuck. We have options available to us, but we haven't actually done the work to actually build out the automation. Having built a lot of other client server systems in Backdrop in the recent past, things like the recent news block that we publish out to dashboards, the project browser. There's some other client server things that we've done recently too. They're not coming to mind. What's that?
Telemetry?
Telemetry, of course. Telemetry. Yeah, telemetry. Yeah, code sign. Yeah, that we're working on code signing. This kind of these systems where there's both a server aspect and a client aspect are hard to get worked out, because just like there, you have to do things on backdropcms.org, which is in one code base, sometimes in project module, and then you also have to do things in core, or in this case, probably a contrib module to do the extraction. So I don't think that, now I'm thinking that maybe we shouldn't build it into the release bundler, into the packager, because that involves that client like push type API, which is complicated to get set up. And instead, it would be good if we could look at using some of the other APIs we already have, like project browser, that lets you find all the projects or updates and just like scrape it on a regular, on cron jobs, and look for new releases of projects, find them. If they exist, download the release archive and then scrape it, and have all of that live in one place, like on the localization server, rather than having this like relationship between multiple things. And then we don't have to build any new APIs, hopefully. We just use either project browser or update, the update server, to get those releases, and then build in the scraping as a cron job on the localization site.
Nate, would it make sense, given that this year is end of life of D7, to have an initiative to make a start, and by the end of the year convert the localization site to Backdrop, because we would have to eventually bite the bullet and do it, right? So I know that Olaf is asking a different thing, but maybe we need to start thinking about the foundation. We need to get this done.
Yeah, I think you might have a really good point there. It might be one of the deterrents from people working on this in the first place, is because people want to be using Backdrop, building out their stuff, and working on a Drupal 7 site itself might be something that is discouraging people from working on it, because even if we do build it out, we'll have to port it in the future.
Yeah. On that point, my understanding is that the localization server relies on organic groups, and which there's been quite a bit of activity. So one of the blockers to moving to Backdrop has been organic groups, and recently a group of people have been kind of really pushing the organic groups issue forward. So hopefully, if we can get that released, that will help.
Yeah, both good points.
Or if we could decouple that from being a requirement, are we actually using it, the groups features in localization? If we're not, maybe just as an initial step, decouple it, do the porting, and then re-implement, because we've done this in the past for other modules, right? So yeah,
that's pushing us to get organic groups. So maybe we don't want it.
Okay, yeah, cool. Ignore that I said. Wipe this from the video.
No, it's a good point. I have no idea, Greg.
I haven't got an idea either. I wasn't involved as much as I would like in the localization. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of these other questions, yeah, what's a good approach? I think that I could post a comment to this issue number 6, repeating what I just said, and I think that that might help a little bit. Um, who wants to and who is able to help is definitely an open question. And should we spend money on this? Also, that's a really interesting question because we do have funds, and quite honestly, we don't spend a lot of money, which is great. I think that the way that we operate very lean with mostly volunteer work, almost entirely volunteer work for pretty much everything, and everything that's not volunteered is donated. But at the same time, we're still accepting donations, um, and acquiring like fair amount of funds to do things. And I don't think that we'd be able to pay anybody a tremendous amount, but maybe a couple of $1,000s just to motivate someone, that actually could make a lot of progress. So I don't think payment is out of the question. But that does go to the project management committee. Anything that has anything to do with spending money needs to be run through the PMC. Yeah. So it seems viable. Seems not entirely out of line with other stuff that we spend money on. Usually we spend money on things that we don't have built-in community resources or talents to do, though, which is this would make it a little bit exceptional because we have lots of developers. So it's like it's the one thing that unfortunately normally we don't pay for is development time, just because we have a lot of volunteers in that area. When it comes to like marketing and design, that tends to be where we tend to spend more money, and like physical things like printing and swag and t-shirts and those sorts of things.
I don't think that we had an official sort of like initiative back to the subject of putting everything required for the localization side into Backdrop. How do we get about doing that? I would be interested to help out, but it would take more than a person.
Yeah, well, one thing, localized.backdropcms.org has its own issue queue. The issue number 45 actually was only open 20 days ago, much to my surprise. Upgrade translation server to Backdrop is issue number 45. Here's I'll put it in the chat. Here's just the overall issue queue. It's under github.com/backdrop-ops/localized.backdropcms.org.
Yeah, that's one non-core issue that I think should be prioritized as a strategic thing for the community. And because there's pressure because of D7 end of life, of course.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to communicate with Olaf to kind of figure out what he sees as the priority as far as the order of things, because as our localization owner, if you will, I think that's his PMC representation is the localization aspect of things. Yeah, it would be interesting to hear whether this like scraping of contrib projects, if that is a priority over like getting the localized server onto Backdrop. Because I think we should listen to him as to which way we should go for prioritizing what we do first. Yeah, all in all, lots of things to be done there. I would encourage anybody that has any thoughts to post this issue number 6 within the localized group. I'm going to post a comment that I've drafted as well after this meeting. Okay. Let's move on to 122. So 122 will be coming out May 15th, 2022. Like I said, our general like planning and prioritization of features, we're not quite ready to discuss those yet. Although Tim had mentioned that there's a little bit of progress improving one of our sites to collect better survey data. Tim, could you talk about that?
Sure. Basically, Jen, since our last meeting, has imported all of the new feature requests from GitHub into the forums. They all have nodes now in Backdrop, the forum.backdropcms.org site. And I think the flag module is already installed. So the foundations are there for somebody to go in and vote, but we don't have really any UI. We're not exposing it yet. There, if you land on backdrop.org, there's no place to see that you can vote. But that's a pretty big step forward towards actually allowing some kind of voting on Backdrop or on the forum site. And so I'm trying to get something spun up locally so I can play with the configuration a bit before I make changes to the live. But it's realistic to see within a week or two. I'm not promising within a week or two, but it's realistic that we could be within a week or two close to being able to launch another survey. What might be great is if we could have some results before Backdrop Live, which is just over a month out.
Excellent. So that's interesting. So is the mechanism you're envisioning, is that like there's just a list of every feature request is a node, and then you like give it a thumbs up to like prioritize it?
I'm not, well, so initially we just pulled in all of the feature requests. We'd like to be able, well, I think right now the idea would be that if you wanted to add something to that list, you'd have to make a feature request in the issue queue, and that will get pulled in. We might not, I don't know that we want every feature. Some of the feature requests might not be so good for the survey. We'd like to kind of, at least some way, prioritize certain feature requests in terms of making them more visible, right? We don't want people to have to go through a list of 600 feature requests in order to vote. So we need to figure out a way to kind of highlight the ones we know that are already more popular and maybe float them to the top of the list. But if people wanted to go further down the list and vote for things, they could. Yeah. Okay, I don't know if I remember the rest of the question, but exactly how this is going to work, we're still kind of making up as we go.
Okay, cool.
But in theory, they're all there, and if I understood Jen correctly, it will automatically update. New feature requests will automatically, nodes will get created on the forum site. I got to double check that.
Good. Well, I hope that will make it so that I was a little bit worried about being on the forum because it made it sound like people might start discussing a new feature request on the forum instead of the issue queue, and then we ended up with redundancy. But I think if it's forced to be on the issue tracker, that puts the discussion in one place. Yeah. Well,
kind of. I mean, Jen and I talked briefly about that because we do want people to talk when they're voting about like why they're voting for issues, but we want to avoid what you just talked about, which is people trying to fix the issues in the forum.
Yeah.
So there will be a little bit of us trying to balance those two things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Well, awesome. Thank you, Tim, and Jen, who's not here. Thank you for your work on collecting that information. Let's see. I also have a note here, just generally for 122. Indigo Zella and Archie Piano have been working on entity access discussions, which I'm trying to keep on top of. This helps facilitate some of the reference module in core functionality. So I'm keeping an eye on these discussions as they're developing. And I'm also very keen on doing what we can to like push forward anything that has to do with putting reference or entity reference module into core. I think that we're still vaguely on the plan to put entity reference directly into core. Herb Duel taking the lead on development of the contrib module, but I haven't seen a real solid. I hope I'm not wrong about this. I don't think that there's a pull request yet to like just put entity reference into core. I think that we might not quite be there yet. So these things that are improving the APIs of our core entity system, I think that those are a good thing for us to be spending our effort on. I also noticed on my own Backdrop website that Entity Plus has taken the top spot as far as the most popular contrib module, dethroning backup and migrate module, which really makes me kind of it makes me sad because I feel like, that we're not providing the APIs that we need to in core, and that's why Entity Plus is like shoring up the APIs that we have, which and that also makes improving core more difficult because we end up with these like compatibility difference between what Contrib is doing to the entity system and what core is doing. So these things like the entity access improvements and anything that's related to improving our entity system, I think that I'd like to see them move forward as instead of doing these things in Contrib. Tim or Robert, do you guys have anything to say? I saw that you guys are unmuting.
Well, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, actually, two things. One short, which is just something Tim did for 1.21 that I found really useful and might have contributed to our getting so many things into it, was you created, I don't know if it was an issue or a blog post, but you basically said, give us no more than 3 issues that are important to you for 122. And that sort of narrowed the focus to enough that you could say, oh, I can contribute, I can help with that, and thought maybe we might try that again.
Sure. My idea was that was particularly effective in the crunch, the 3 or 4 weeks before release. Do you think that would have value throughout the cycle to have a list like that?
Yeah, because as old things fall off, you can add more. And that was one of the things, you noted as things were crossed off, you said, hey, this is now RTBC. Right. And that was also good.
Well, maybe if we're going to do it like the whole full release cycle, maybe it shouldn't be a blog post, but something else. So if anybody has thoughts on how to do that, otherwise we could keep doing the blog post. There's nothing wrong with that.
We have a similar concept, which is the advocation of things. So you can't advocate for one thing unless you have finished with the thing that you're currently advocating, which resembles the specify 3, but 1 needs to go before you can specify another 3rd thing. It's similar to the notion of advocated things, but instead of the limit being only 1, it's 3. Sounds similar.
And maybe that's the mechanism. But what was nice about this was there was a page you could go to and see what they were. And it's whereas I don't actually know how to easily see who all's advocating.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There's also some value in that it doesn't last forever. That the forum post or the blog post was created, it has a date on it, and that's like these are things that people have prioritized right now, as opposed to the things that we've prioritized in the history of the project. Yeah.
Well, Robert, I'm willing to help with that, and either as a blog post or another way of doing it. Let's think a little more about that, how to do that most effectively. I think there is, if it becomes too institutionalized, it might lose its power.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Funny how that works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a second topic, which stems from what Nate just raised about Entity Plus. And there's actually, RG Piano and I are probably going to be creating a core issue for this. The fact that Entity Plus is required by so many modules, Alejandro made a list of 10 or 15 modules that need it. And because it doesn't exist in Drupal, you have to go through some special hoops to do an upgrade. Because since if the module doesn't exist in Drupal, then during the upgrade, the modules that relied on it will not have, Entity Plus won't be seen as enabled. So all the downstream modules that depended on it get disabled. And so when you do your upgrade, half of your modules aren't actually, they end up disabled and not upgraded. And this is especially bad for UberCard, which has like 20 sub-modules. So the solution that we've been using for UberCard and rules was to create stub modules in Drupal 7, basically totally empty modules that you just say, install those, turn them on, then do your upgrade, and that works. but people have to know to go do this, and often they don't discover the problem until they're halfway through an upgrade and things aren't working the way they want. Another suggestion that both Lauren and Indigo Zella have said, well, let's turn the modules on as part of the upgrade process. Now, you can't actually do that in update hooks because by then it's too late. Things have already been disabled, and the update hooks won't run. But you can do it during hook requirements. And we've got a proof of concept for rules. There's a PR out that works. But that too is still not ideal because what it amounts to is during the update phase of hook requirements, you call module enable on Entity Plus, which is also, which works sort of, except that then fires hook enable and hook modules enable, fires hook modules enable for every other module, which may not have been upgraded yet, because this is happening during the requirements phase.
Yeah.
So the issue that we'll be putting together, I guess, is kind of outlining what I just did, but suggesting that because it's a widespread dependency, maybe there's something we can do in core to make it easier to accommodate this situation when a backdrop module requires a backdrop module that didn't exist in Drupal.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds that there needs to be a hook between the hook requirements and hook update hooks. Sounds to me.
Or we could do something where when you try to run update.php, literally hook requirements finds any missing modules and says, it stops you at that point and says, hey, you need to download all these modules or provide some kind of bypass, to like make it so that the modules are all there before the update hooks run. But
So
yeah, but this is actually special consideration because Entity Plus wasn't a module. I see what you're saying. Wasn't a module in 777. So
right. Same for Entity UI, which is also required. So so it's kind of a complicated thing, and we'll want to use the issue to hash out possibilities, but because it's sort of centered around Entity Plus, and you mentioned it, I thought I would bring it up here.
mm-hmm. Do you happen to know what issue queue that's in or where we can find that issue about this problem?
Let's see, in the contrib rules, that's where there's the PR that addresses it. We're going to post a core issue queue, or an issue in the core queue, but haven't yet. Because we've been sort of talking about all the bits and pieces.
Cool.
So maybe the thing to do is watch for this issue to show up, and maybe that's what I'll do after the meeting to get it going.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks, Robert. Okay. Let's see. Other topics. Other issues that I'd like to get moving forward. Dropping support for PHP versions below 5.6, issue 3992. Our objective was to merge that in really pretty quickly in the early 122 cycle right now. And we have the pull request there that bumps the PHP version of 5.6 and also now rips out all of the workarounds that we used to have for PHP 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5. I think that pull request, it's one of mine. It's ready to go as far as review is concerned. Greg, I already saw that you took a look at it a couple of times. Thank you for that. But if we get some eyes on that to get it past needs review, I think that would be a good thing for us to move forward on to bump up our minimum PHP version, which then that'll also, I've talked about this before, that'll raise all kinds of other issues, regarding what features we want to start using from some newer PHP versions, like the short array syntax being the key one there. But yeah, that'll all come later. At this point, it's just dropping support for the old version, and then figuring out what to do will come later. Let's see. Also, I keep bringing this issue up because I'm a really big fan of it. The automatic linting for PHP files, or PHPCS syntax parsing, is issue 5245. There has been a little bit of discussion within the last couple of weeks. Indigo Zella, Joseph, and Gregory, and BW Panda, three of whom are in this meeting, have been discussing like where they should put the new rules for PHPCS. Like, looks like maybe we might end up putting it in backdrop ops instead of in backdrop contrib, kind of making it like, because it's not a module, it does kind of make sense to put it someplace else. And it keeps it out of core to make it so that core maintainers don't have to deal with it, but it does put it in a place where several other people can work on it. It's a little bit more tightly regulated than contrib. I think that sounds like a fine plan. I don't have any opposition to that whatsoever. It's a little bit weird, but because backdrop ops tends to be, like tends to be sites. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I think the most important thing is that we get it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think right now the plan is also like we're going to make a new repository. We're going to use the latest version of PHPCS. Start with a small number of PHPCS linting rules, things like whitespace, file names, naming conventions for functions, things that are really trivial. And then start with minimal, get it turned on, and then iterate on it to expand the linting out to other things.
Plus the array syntax that you mentioned earlier. Like it would automatically do things for us if we decide that this is something that we want to use.
Yeah. So that would be really great, just to get that unblocked, like where we put the rules and what version of PHPCS we use has been a blocker on this for a long time. And I think if those simple things were in place, like Indigo Zala has been such an amazing contributor for working on our GitHub Actions functionality. I think the actual GitHub Actions portion of thing would get done pretty quickly because that's kind of fun and profitable. Okay.
We have two rare sightings. Peter and Andy joined. Maybe give them the opportunity to speak. At some point, Andy unmuted. Hey guys.
Hello. Sorry,
Hello.
I'm just joining, so I'm not sure what you're talking about, but nice to be on the chat.
Okay. I thought that you actually joined in order to talk about something. I wanted to give you the opportunity to do
No,
that.
just got home and saw that you were still on, so I
Okay, cool.
checked in.
And Peter?
Awesome.
Yeah, same age, just listening in.
Okay.
All right. Well, great to have both of you here. I think, yeah, I may have joined actually at the time where it's like, well, we're kind of out of things to focus on in particular. I think that runs through the agenda. So I'll kind of open the floor. If anybody does have anything they'd like to bring up, we can give it some time now. Go ahead, Tim.
I stepped away for a second. You brought up the getting reference or entity reference module into core. It sounds to me like we may not have made a commitment yet. We've moved away from the reference module as the prime candidate to entity reference. And I'm wondering, we highlight the reference module. It's promoted to the top of our modules list, partly because we were encouraging people to use it because it was our presumed selection. And I'm wondering if it might be time that we end that practice and no longer like promote that so that it automatically shows up at the top of the list. Every time I see that now, I'm like, should that still be there? Because
Yeah, I agree.
I'll replace that with entity reference. I'll replace it.
well, or
Maybe
neither.
just not anything at the moment.
Yeah.
I think
Remove
might
it
be a
then.
good
Remove
idea.
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
just
remove it.
not promote either of them. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. All right. This is a complete non sequitur, but I see in our agendas at the top of it that it says that our video meetings are published to YouTube, which I know, and also to Odyssey, which I'm not familiar with. Is this description accurate? Are we publishing to 2 places now?
Yeah,
Peter
I
is
updated that recently. So Odyssey is a more distributed platform. So instead of being owned by like Google or something, it's just like more free and open source in a way, I guess. And it has the ability to automatically sync your videos from your YouTube account to your Odyssey page, which I've set that up, and that's happening now. So it's just a way of reaching more people in a way, I guess.
Cool. Let's see. Do we have a page or something like that on? So Odyssey is odyssee.com. Is that correct?
Yep. So I think the link in the agenda should take you there.
Oh, I see. Odyssey.com /@ backdrop CMS. Very cool. Huh.
It is a bit delayed. I've noticed that if I try to catch up on meetings on YouTube, they pretty much happen straight away once a meeting finishes or within like an hour, whereas on Odyssey, the dev meeting for some reason comes up within an hour or so, whereas the other like outreach/design meeting doesn't come up until like 12 hours later sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, but excellent. It looks like they're all here. Seeing like, all the way a year and more of our meetings are all here. That's wonderful. Very cool. All right. Do we have any other topics to be raised? Okay. Well, let's wrap it up for today then. It'll be a short meeting. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks everybody for your ideas. That localization server, I'll post a comment there. I did go through the RTBC queue this week and got down. I think all of them have been cleared or moved back to needs work. Our 121.2, the next bug fix version has 20 closed issues in it already out of a total of 42. So we've gotten, yeah, I know, kind of amazing, right? We've gotten down, there's now almost more closed issues than there are open ones in the next milestone. And I looked
I'll
at the
start
one.
creating some. That's unacceptable.
And I looked at the 121.2 milestone, and if there's only like 22 open,
Yeah, you probably will too.
there's only 22 open issues that are prioritized, and of those, like 2/3 of them are needs review. And yeah, if Clonus wasn't working against me, I was like, maybe we could empty out the prioritized list finally. And maybe not, and that's fine. But I'm really happy with the progress that we've been making. I'm trying really hard to keep our momentum from the release just by keeping the merge cycle in. But all of that is really dependent upon the RTBC queue continuing to come through, which I've been super pleased with the cross reviewing that's happening. Like we're really having a lot of excellent cross reviewing that's happening. I saw actually Greg, you and Laren, I think, had like a tit for tat where you guys both had an RTPC issue, just fixing small things that you swapped on things, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Yeah, so I'm very happy and proud of our community making all of these bug fixes. It's been a great couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I mentioned in Zulip as well, there's new people joining or recently, relatively recently, people that joined recently that are experts in one area or not. Like RG Piano, for example, seems to be very proficient with classes, entities, and things like that. So I'm not very into that and entity access. So there's a lot of discussion similar to what happened with myself and Laren with Indigo Zella and RG Piano. So it's good that you have feedback and you don't have a single person, pushing for a thing, and then you get some momentum. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
I mean, so many issues. I've had maybe 3 of the issues were like 2 or 3 people, but almost every issue, like when I put the commit in there for the credit, it's like 8 to 10 people, like every time. And I'm just like, this is incredible. So yeah, really, really loving the collaboration and just the sheer number of contributors that we have working on things. yeah, something to be very thankful for, which I am. All right. Let's see, Joseph, do you want to say anything? I saw that you unmuted.
I was just gonna say Greg should go add the field storage backend cleanup issue to the milestone. That'll be an open issue for a while.
No, don't
So
do
it'll-
that. Don't just put issues that we're not going to finish into the milestone.
We've got time.
Only if somebody wants to be an advocate for that, all right? Yeah, I don't think that's a bug fix type item. Well, anyway, yeah, let's wrap it up for today. Thanks everybody again for joining, and yeah, we'll catch you all on the internet. Thanks so much.
See you guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.